Undercover CEO exposes surprising truth behind a dishwasher's 60-hour workweek. Amazing transformation. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow as he slammed another stack of plates into the industrial dishwasher, the hum of the machine drowning out the shifting chaos of the restaurant kitchen. Each clang of silverware felt like a bell tolling for his dreams. At 21, he was trapped in a relentless grind, washing away not just dishes, but his hopes of becoming a chef, a passion overshadowed by the need to support his mother and 3 younger siblings after their father's sudden passing. On good nights, laughter echoed, but mostly it was just the sound of labor. "Hey, Jack," his coworker Tony called out, struggling with a pile of pots. "Think you can grab those?" Jack could see the exhaustion edged on Tony's face. He was in the same boat, working long hours to provide for his family. Jack nodded, a smile plastered on his face, that same warmth he forced through the weariness. But behind that facade lay the pressure, like a weight on his chest, a constant reminder that every hour spent working was hours stolen from his siblings. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. You could see the skepticism in the eyes of some diners, judgment lurking behind their forkfuls of gourmet food. They never saw the person behind the apron. They saw the uniform stained with a hard day's work as an indicator of skill, or lack thereof. Jack's heart sank at the thought. The contradiction of his dedication and the daily disdain chipped away at him. He fought to ignore the whispers, the mockery of just a dishwasher. But the ache in his bones spoke louder. Did they even know how hard he worked just to make rent? Then Sarah walked in, the new CEO, but she was disguised as a line cook, tormented by a desire to prove her worth amid suspicion. Jack met her gaze across the frenetic kitchen floor, and in that moment, something shifted. Her presence ignited hope, a light in the always cast shadow of his responsibilities. But with that light came the looming fear that sharing his culinary dreams would open him to ridicule. What if she saw him as just another cog in the machine? As the shifts dragged into exhausting nights, the tension crept higher. One chaotic evening, a new manager snapped, targeting Jack for his willingness to take on more, for being calm in the tempest. He felt the rejection sting. Was that how they perceived him? Weak? As he stood defensively alongside his coworkers, he hesitated. "What if I lose my job?" flashed through his mind, panic radiating outwards, intertwining with the desperate need to be heard. A sudden silence swept through the kitchen as Jack's voice broke the tension, a decision blooming perilously in his chest. Going against the management was the very thing that could dismantle the fragile stability he'd fought like hell to build. Courage battled with doubt, and as the words spilled out, the urgency of his plight felt palpable. Would he take a stand for justice or protect the crumb of security that nourished his family? The moment hung heavy, like an unresolved chord, echoing in the kitchen filled with strained breaths. Jack fought his racing thoughts, knowing a single choice could shatter everything, affirming his painstaking dedication or pave the path toward his dreams for a brighter future. As uncertainty lingered, he sensed the clock ticking. A decision loomed before him, teetering on the brink of everything he believed in. Jack's heart raced as he confronted the silence, the weight of the kitchen's expectations pressing down. His voice, shaky yet persistent, cut through the thick cloud of uncertainty. "We deserve to be treated with respect," he said, surprising even himself with the strength behind his words. A ripple of tentative agreement spread among his coworkers, mirroring the courage Jack had summoned. Tony nodded slowly, a ghost of a smile appearing in the corner of his mouth, while others exchanged glances filled with hesitant hope. It was a small flicker, but in that moment, Jack felt different. For the first time, he could see the possibility of change, not just for himself, but for everyone who had toiled under the dismissive gaze of management. The manager, taken aback by the uprising of solidarity, regained his composure. "You think you're entitled to a say in how things are run? You're just a dishwasher." His tone dripped with contempt, honing in on the vulnerability Jack had always felt. But Jack refused to let that label define him. "If I'm just a dishwasher, then that means I know the weight of this kitchen better than anyone. I understand what it takes to keep this place running, and I believe we can do better. You might see us as disposable, just cogs in your machine, but we are more than that. We're a team." The words tumbled out, amplified by a fierceness he hadn't realized he possessed. The kitchen, once a realm of chaos, felt charged with raw energy. Jack found himself unwilling to retreat to silence. As the managers exchanged looks of disbelief, Jack recognized the burgeoning responsibility he had just embraced. This wasn't merely about him. It was about fostering an environment that compelled respect for every individual, regardless of their role. The thought felt exhilarating and terrifying all at once. What if his bold step waited on the precipice of dire consequences? Would his coworkers back him up, or would they dismiss his plea as naive? Almost instinctively, Jack turned to Sarah, the CEO hidden in plain sight. He needed her validation more than ever, some indication that his voice mattered beyond these walls. Their eyes locked, and in hers he ventured to find understanding. For a brief second, she appeared less like a stranger and more a potential ally. There was something in the way she glanced between him and the manager, an unmistakable flicker of recognition building in her demeanor. Teamwork is essential, and you need to understand that this isn't just about hierarchy, she finally spoke, her perspective shifting the dynamics. Jack has a point, and if you treat your staff like machinery, they will become just that. Amid the mounting tension, Jack felt a rush of vindication. The words had landed, not only with his peers, but with someone who could enact change. As the confrontation subsided, questions bubbled in Jack's mind. What would this mean for his role in the kitchen? Had he truly broken free from the shackles of silence? As the evening dragged on and clean dishes piled up, Jack realized he had set a course beyond merely surviving. He was learning to navigate the treacherous waters of ambition, purpose, and genuine leadership. But as the kitchen began to return to its routine, a familiar unease gnawed at him. This was only the beginning. The thrill of fighting for change stirred something deep within him, yet uncertainty loomed larger than before. What lay ahead in this newfound path of resistance? Would they rally together, or would he become an outcast once more? With dread and exhilaration coiling together in his gut, Jack steeled himself. The answer was still looming in the shadows of uncertainty. His journey toward reclaiming his culinary dreams had only just begun. The buzz of the kitchen hum returned, but Jack felt set apart amidst the clattering plates and sizzling pans. His previous bravado had faded into a quiet uncertainty, turning his thoughts inward. Was he merely a voice in the wind, or had he truly begun to shape the culture around him? As the night dragged on and the understaffed kitchen pushed forward in frantic rhythm, each dish washed echoed in Jack's mind. The action seemed to manifest the internal storm swirling within him. Half-hearted laughter came from Tony and a few others, but Jack noticed the apprehensive glances when the manager passed by. Had he ignited a fire, or just stirred a pot of bubbling dissent? With every scrape of a dish he washed, Jack felt the weight of his unspoken promise. He had called for respect, a shift in the structure of power, but now the question was how he would follow through. Was he ready to be a leader? He had survived the grind, yes, but leadership required something more potent. His determination began to morph into anxiety as he pondered what was truly at stake. He met Sarah's gaze across the kitchen as she moved around, her presence effortless yet commanding. She was a few levels away from his station, but their connection felt more significant than their physical separation. Sarah was not just the CEO, she was a catalyst for change. Jack couldn't risk being dismissed as just another dishwasher again. He needed to approach her to clarify if she would help him champion this cause. His palms clammy, he took a deep breath and decided it was now or never. As he made his way toward her, Jack's mind raced with potential dialogues. What if she rejected him? Could she see the value in what he had proposed? But the path of a leader often began with action, not words dashed in hesitation. Finally, he found himself standing beside her, a gut-busting mix of courage and anxiety propelling him forward. "Sarah," he said, his voice steadier than he anticipated. "Can we talk?" She turned to him, inquisitiveness sparking in her eyes. "Sure, Jack, what's on your mind?" In that moment, spilling his thoughts felt both vital and perilous. "I need to understand if there's a real chance for change. What I said earlier, it's not just noise. I believe this kitchen can thrive with the right approach." He noticed a flicker of surprise cloud her expression, which immediately transformed into interest. "I appreciate your honesty. Change doesn't come easy, but it does start with voices like yours. Do you have a plan?" Jack's mind erupted with ideas, the sheer weight of them crashing together, trying to coalesce into something coherent. "I think we should start by having regular meetings where everyone can voice their concerns. If people are involved in decisions, it might shift how they feel about their work." Sarah considered this, her gaze unwavering. "That's a strong beginning. Employees need to feel valued. You're not alone in this. Empower your colleagues to find their voice too." Her endorsement was energizing, propelling Jack forward. For the first time, he felt the possibility of actual change. But beneath this newfound energy, a lingering dread stabbed at him. There was no guarantee this path wouldn't lead to isolation or retaliation from management. Perhaps the stakes were higher than before, tipping the scales of his commitment to a cause greater than himself. As Jack pondered the ramifications of this approach, his internal dialogue spiraled into uncharted territory. He needed to confront his fear head-on, not only of raising his voice, but of becoming the catalyst for change. This was a crucial turning point, but with every step thereafter, the shadows of doubt loomed. With Sarah's endorsement igniting a small spark of clarity, Jack stepped back from their conversation, feeling both liberated and exposed. The enormity of his task lay ahead, coupled with the ever-pressing question: would the very team he hoped to inspire rally to his side, or would they shrink back into complacency? The moment came to question everything he thought he knew. Would he harness the courage to persevere through the inevitable pushback ahead? His next steps would demand more than words. They would require conviction and unwavering belief. As he returned to his station, the weight of possibility loomed, more intense than ever. The stage was set, not for a kitchen filled merely with fire and flames, but for a battleground of ideals. Would he rise through the uncertainty, or would he back down when it mattered most? Something bigger than him was brewing in the heat of the kitchen, ready to be unleashed. The time had come to face the real battle, a test not only of his resolve, but of who he would emerge as in this transformative battle. The next morning, a cloud of uncertainty hung over Jack as he walked into the kitchen. The usual buzz of activity felt different, laden with unspoken words and unseen tensions. Each step he took was a reminder that he was now not just part of the kitchen crew, but potentially their leader. His conversation with Sarah echoed in his mind, a potent mix of possibility and dread. Shuffling past rows of pots and pans, he felt the weight of everyone's eyes on him. Could they sense the shift in his purpose? He had committed himself to facilitate change, yet that determination was tainted with worry. What if his fellow workers didn't want to engage? What if they were content with the status quo? Jack could sense a fracturing tension in the air, thick enough to slice. As the day unfolded, the shifts changed and the kitchen morphed into a chaotic dance of orders flying in and out. Jack's hands worked mechanically, but his mind was elsewhere, tracing hypothetical paths of leadership. "Hey, Jack." The voice broke through his thoughts. It was Tony. "You good, man? You seem a little off today." Jack forced a smile, but inside he was grappling with self-doubt. "Yeah, just thinking about some changes we might implement. Nothing concrete yet." Tony raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet skeptical. "Changes, huh? What kind are we talking about?" The question triggered a moment of clarity. He didn't need a fully developed plan right away. He needed to start a conversation. "Maybe we can have a meeting soon, just to throw around some ideas, gather everyone's input, see what they want." Tony's expression populated with concern, skepticism mixed with a hint of admiration. "You really think they'll want to speak up?" Jack hesitated, staring at the sink full of greasy dishes. "I have to believe they will. It's about creating a space where we all feel heard." His voice softened, uncertain. He had to be convincing, not just for Tony, but for everyone else, too. As they continued working, Jack contemplated the feedback he might receive. He knew that initiating vulnerability would require an unyielding courage, a trait he wasn't entirely certain he possessed. Just then, a loud crash rang out, interrupting his thoughts. A stack of plates, precariously balanced, toppled over, clattering to the floor. Laughter erupted around the kitchen. Jack seized the moment, standing tall amid the chaos. "All right, everyone, who's in to clean that up?" he called out, his voice echoing with tentative authority. Surprised glances met him, followed by a ripple of laughter. One by one, colleagues popped up to help, giggling as they picked up the broken dishes. For the first time, there was a sense of unity among them, a momentary blurring of professional roles. This small act of leadership ignited a spark of courage within Jack. Perhaps change didn't have to be monumental. It could begin with simple interactions and shared responsibilities. During the lunch break, he gathered a few of his colleagues around a table. Jack could feel his heart race, but he pressed forward. "Hey, I think it would be great if we all could brainstorm about our work environment. I'd love for everyone to share their thoughts." Murmurs of agreement sparked hesitation from some, a promise of insights from others. But in that moment of vulnerability, Jack realized it wasn't just about leading the conversation. It was about creating a dialogue that flourished on the foundation of mutual respect. As the discussion sparked, Jack's initial fear started to dissolve, replaced by excitement and a sense of belonging. The kitchen was becoming a stage for ideas, and he was, for the first time, genuinely engaged in this transformative act. But amidst the budding hope, a deeper tension hung in the air. What would happen when he faced the managerial powers resisting this change? Jack's determination shifted within the context of potential adversities ahead. As he stepped away from the table, pondering the reactions of both peers and management, he couldn't help but wonder how far he was willing to push. Would conviction stand firm against the heavy weight of opposition? The heart of the matter revealed itself. Were societal structures truly ready for disruption? Jack was stepping toward a reckoning that would test the limits of his resolve. Fueled by a blend of hope and trepidation, he braced for what lay ahead. The time for strategy was here, but would he adapt quickly enough to the shifting winds of the kitchen and the management? The next phase in this battle for change was about to unfold, demanding every ounce of his resolve. Jack awoke the next morning with an uneasy mix of determination and dread pulsating through him. The kitchen felt different. The air simmered with the potential for change, yet shadows lingering, unsettling him. He had initiated a dialogue, but he knew the next steps were crucial for both his colleagues and himself. Today was about accountability. If he truly wanted to lead, he had to step out of the shadows of self-doubt. As he prepped for the day, the incessant clanging of pots and the chatter of the crew took on new meaning. Each sound reminded him that he was no longer an unseen cog in the machinery of the kitchen. He smoothed his apron, regarded his reflection in a stainless steel pot, and braced himself for the challenges ahead. This was the day to rally his team and bring their voices into the forefront. He entered the kitchen, greeted by Tony's focused expression. "Ready for that meeting, Jack?" The casual question came with underlying seriousness. Jack realized that everyone was watching him, sensing his intention to lead. The establishment of this meeting could either fall flat or evolve into something transformative. "Yeah," he said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "Let's gather everyone together. I think it's time we talked about how we can make our kitchen a better place." With that announcement, he felt a rush of adrenaline, but it was soon intertwined with the resurgence of old hesitations. What if his colleagues perceived his efforts as trivial? What if they dismissed his concerns? But this was his moment to cultivate trust and collaboration. He began calling out to each member of the crew, beckoning them toward the small break area with a blend of nervous excitement and hope. As they settled in, the diversity of their expressions became apparent. Curiosity, skepticism, and for some, reluctant engagement. Jack's heart raced as he addressed the group. "I know we often just plow through the orders, but I believe we can carve out time for ourselves. Let's not just exist in this kitchen, let's thrive in it." The murmurs around the table indicated a cocktail of skepticism and interest. Lisa, a veteran with years of experience, rested her chin on her hand, observing him. "It's all well and good to talk about change, but how do we even start?" Her voice carried the weight of reality, and Jack felt the challenge embedded in her words. Jack took a breath. "How about we outline ideas as a team? What do we want to improve? Whether it's the workflow, scheduling, or simply our communication among each other, every contribution counts." He noticed a few nods. This was the acknowledgement he had been craving. Encouraged by their tentative approval, he facilitated the discussion, noting observations and sketching ideas on paper. Jack could see the walls lowering as voices filled the space. Colleagues began sharing frustrations about working conditions, and suggestions flourished like unexpected blooms in a rocky garden. Yet the specter of management lurked in the back of his mind. Jack's heartbeat intensified with each phrased idea, thoughts swirling about how they would react. Would Mr. Johnson, the uptight manager, be open to their suggestions, or would he shut them down? He felt a coil of anxious energy build in his chest, but he pressed on, focusing on the ignition of cooperation before him. As the hour passed, excitement thrummed through the crew. Jack noticed a palpable sense of ownership developing among his colleagues. Ideas that emerged were not just his, they belonged to the collective. The transformational potential was evident, and he could almost taste the satisfaction of tangible improvement. The meeting wrapped up, leaving Jack dizzy with exhilaration, but uncertainty crackled anew. Standing before, the group had uncovered something larger than he expected. His colleagues had something to say, and he was their chosen vessel. But the next obstacle was formidable. Would the management appreciate their input or dismiss their enthusiasm as mere chatter? Jack moved to clean up the scattered papers, but the words from Lisa lingered in his mind. The balance between pushing for change and facing opposition was precarious at best. Could he keep the momentum going? The pressure mounted, and Jack felt the beginnings of a personal reckoning looming ahead. As he left the break area, determination fueled his steps. It was time to confront management, armed with ideas and the collective voice of the kitchen crew behind him. The moment was ripe for confrontation, and Jack prepared to face whatever storm awaited. Would the courage he discovered in collaboration hold its ground against the daunting force of authority? The stakes were higher than ever. Jack stood at the threshold of the management office, his heart racing as he contemplated the enormity of what lay ahead. He had walked away from the meeting feeling emboldened, yet standing here he felt the weight of doubt creep in. The kitchen had buzzed with a shared excitement, but would that enthusiasm translate into meaningful change? He knocked lightly and then entered, finding Mr. Johnson hunched over a mountain of paperwork. The manager looked up, eyebrows raised in surprise. Jack could see years of fatigue etched into his expression. Yet today, Jack sensed an opportunity lurking beneath that weary facade. "Mr. Johnson, do you have a moment?" His voice wavered slightly, a crack in the confident armor he had donned for this confrontation. "Make it quick, Jack. I'm swamped here," came the brusque reply. Yet the flicker of curiosity in Johnson's eyes urged him on. Jack shifted his feet, collecting the nerve to present the ideas the kitchen crew had developed. "I believe the team has some valuable suggestions regarding workflow and communication in the kitchen. We had a productive meeting this morning," he began, feeling the familiar swell of anxiety. He had rehearsed his pitch in the mirror, but now found it difficult to maintain eye contact. "Go on," Johnson replied, leaning back in his chair. With each word that followed, Jack's confidence slowly built. He carefully outlined their recommendations, no longer the uncertain staff member, but a spokesperson advocating for well-being and efficiency. As he navigated through their concerns about schedules, burnout, and a lack of appreciation, he detected the juxtaposition of Johnson's dismissive demeanor giving way to a flicker of interest. "Burnout? You think I don't know what that feels like? This kitchen doesn't run itself. If you can't take the heat, maybe it's time to reconsider your roles," Johnson rebutted sharply, a defensive posture that hit Jack hard. He swallowed, his pulse racing at the harsh reminder of how legitimacy was often granted or denied in this environment. Yet the vigor of his peers followed him, steeling his resolve. "With all due respect, sir, the crew isn't asking for less work, but for more support. If we can make changes that bring us together, productivity will increase." For a moment, silence engulfed the room, a standoff teetering between Jack's aspirations and Johnson's skepticism. But Jack noticed the faintest crack in Johnson's walls, the manager's brow furrowed slightly, as if weighing the merits of Jack's argument. Suddenly, a thought struck him, illuminating a hidden opportunity. "You know, creative solutions could not only improve morale, but perhaps save you costs in the long run. Motivated employees work more efficiently. What's better for the bottom line than a happier team?" He delivered the last line with a newfound intensity, hoping to connect beyond just the personal level. As the manager shifted in his chair, Jack braced himself. Was this the turning point or merely another dead end? He had gambled on his ability to persuade, intertwining personal stake and professional foresight, but would it pay off? Johnson finally sighed, a reluctant sound that hinted at contemplation rather than definitive rejection. "Fine, I'll hear what your team has to say, but let's make this count. I won't waste my time on mere ideas. Results follow actions." Jack exhaled, his heart still hammering, but determination rose in him. He had managed to crack open the door. How far could he push it? The realization sank in that Johnson might be more amenable than he'd anticipated, and the challenges ahead could serve as stepping stones rather than barriers. What lay next was reality. Jack needed to hone the collective ideas into a potent proposal that would resonate with management. The real work was about to begin. What would it require to actually translate their enthusiasm into undeniable change? As Jack left the office, the stakes grew higher. Would he find the strength to bridge the gap between aspiration and practicality while continuing to rally his team? It was time to step up and sculpt momentum into success, but the road ahead would demand more than he had ever imagined. The hallway felt longer than usual as Jack made his way back to the kitchen. Each step echoed with the thoughts swirling in his mind. He had achieved a small victory, yet the path before him was strewn with uncertainty. The challenge lay not just in formulating ideas, but in galvanizing a team that had learned to work under a veil of resignation. Upon entering the kitchen, Jack took a moment to observe the familiar faces, each immersed in their tasks. The chatter that had inspired him earlier now seemed muted, a stark reminder of the entrenched culture that had fostered their exhaustion. Jack inhaled deeply, feeling the weight of expectation settle on his shoulders. He needed to channel the exhilaration from his meeting with Johnson into something tangible, a proposal that could resonate with both the management and his team. "All right, everyone," he called, projecting energy that he wasn't entirely sure he felt. The kitchen paused momentarily, eyes darting to him with a mix of curiosity and fatigue. "We need to work together on our ideas. We have a chance to bring meaningful change to how we operate, starting now." As he gathered the crew, Jack thrust aside any lingering doubts and laid out the groundwork for their initiative. They began brainstorming solutions, streamlined communication channels, scheduled feedback sessions, and even team-building activities. Each suggestion fueled the room with a flicker of hope. Jack watched as his colleagues engaged, their enthusiasm igniting his own determination. Yet, amidst their collaboration, a haunting question lingered at the back of his mind. Could they truly sustain this momentum? He sensed a looming threat that their effort might dissipate amidst the chaos of an ordinary work week. "Let's transform today's ideas into a presentation for Mr. Johnson," he declared, grasping the opportunity to solidify their team's engagement. "If we demonstrate clear, actionable strategies, we might just capture his attention." As they crafted the presentation, Jack felt the energy shift. They weren't just pushing for survival anymore. They were aiming for respect. His colleagues started to offer insights he hadn't anticipated, revelations of their own strengths and experiences, building their collective voice into something more powerful. Even Marisol, often quiet, suggested a schedule that allowed for rotating shifts, promoting equality. Jack noted this. Her perspective indicated a deeper understanding of their struggles than he had realized. As ideas were written down and a coherent narrative formed, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose rise within him. This fractured team with weary faces began to transform right before his eyes into a collaborative force determined to reclaim their working environment. Hours later, Jack stood before the team, a makeshift podium created from a crate. "By presenting a united front, we have a shot at restructuring not just workflow, but the very culture of our kitchen. We can show Johnson that we are more than just cogs on a machine. We are vital to this place, and we matter." The moment teetered on the edge of triumph, yet the stark reality was that enthusiasm alone wouldn't secure their success. As they agreed to meet the next morning to finalize the presentation, a nagging thought pulled at him. Was he truly ready to confront the obstacles inherent in the next steps? Stepping into the dimly lit kitchen of the closing hours, Jack clenched the edge of the counter. The tension hung heavily in the air. Even with a solid proposal in hand, would the skeptics shift? Could he convince not just Johnson, but the others who had long accepted the status quo? The stakes were rising, and Jack was standing at a crossroads. In the silence that followed, a haunting realization formed. Every moment counted. He had one chance to break the cycle of indifference that had plagued their kitchen. If their upcoming proposal didn't land, would the team revert to their resigned state, or would Jack find a way to inspire lasting change? The answer lay ahead, shrouded as uncertainty waiting to unfold. The next morning arrived with an electric buzz in the kitchen, the early sun casting long shadows as Jack prepared for the critical presentation. Each sizzle of the grill was a reminder of the urgency he felt. This wasn't just a proposal, it was a chance to transform their shared destiny. Nevertheless, self-doubt gnawed at Jack as he assembled the slides on his laptop. Would the simmering optimism of the team translate into confidence in front of Mr. Johnson? As he glanced around, the faces of his colleagues reflected determination, tinged with lingering apprehension. Marisol, usually shy, was already rearranging her notes on labor schedules. Leo stood beside her, flipping through the proposed communication strategies, a furrow of concentration anchoring his brow. Jack felt a surge of appreciation for them all. Their transformation had begun, but he still needed to see it manifest beyond these kitchen walls. "Okay, let's run through it one more time," Jack suggested, pacing slightly, his heart racing. "I want us all to know our parts inside and out. If one of us falters, it could derail everything we've worked for. They nodded in unison. The power of shared responsibility grew palpable, filling the space with collective resolve. As the team practiced, he noticed small aspects of their presentations that needed honing. Marisol's concise points about improving shift rotations sparked dialogue, and Leo's passion for streamlined communication created an infectious energy. They were gaining ground, and beneath the surface, Jack felt a swell of pride. Yet a gnawing thought persisted. They were still grappling with the legacy of negative experiences. "Let's focus on why we believe this matters," he proposed during a break. "This isn't just a presentation for Johnson, it's a history revision for us. Think about the late shifts, the miscommunications, every late night spent in despair. What are we really reclaiming here?" Their eyes shifted, absorbing the weight of his words. Slowly, the kitchen filled with their shared grievances and hopes. It was the connective tissue they needed. Jack began to see it all in a new light. The extensive overtime, the unspoken silent agreement to endure. As they drew on their memories, he found clarity. Each of us has a story, a reason to push back against the chaos. The room felt charged with the essence of why they were fighting this battle. Jack pressed on. "Let's harness that emotion into our presentation." With renewed fervor, the team delved into an impromptu rehearsal, channeling their frustrations and ambitions into a persuasive narrative. As they role-played questions they might face, Jack realized how far they had progressed from their initial lethargy. Together, they'd become a force, perhaps still tentative, but ready to challenge systematic disdain. When the meeting hour finally arrived, the atmosphere shifted. A mix of palpable excitement intertwined with nerves suffused the kitchen. Standing at the head of the table, Jack could almost feel the vibrations of his teammates as they collectively prepared to face Mr. Johnson. As they entered the conference room, Jack's mind hummed with possibilities. This was it, the moment where bravery could be born from vulnerability. But he also recognized the grave risk of failure. If Johnson dismissed their ideas or belittled their efforts, would they recoil into their previous indifference? Jack turned to Marisol, whose eyes spoke volumes of their shared fear and determination. "No matter what happens, remember that we are more than this moment. We're a team that deserves recognition." With the presentation poised to begin, Jack took a deep breath, ready to confront the towering expectations. It was time to prove that change was not just possible, but essential. Yet, as he began to present, he couldn't shake an ominous feeling. Was he really prepared to face the silent ghosts of resignation that lingered in the room? Or would this meeting reveal far more about his own fears than he had bargained for? Jack's voice trembled slightly as he began his presentation. The air felt thick with unspoken fears and fragility, a palpable tension that could erupt at the slightest critique. Each slide flickered past, highlighting their painstakingly crafted strategies to improve efficiency and morale. Jack could see Mr. Johnson leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, the epitome of understated skepticism. As Jack spoke, the hesitant tremor in his voice transformed into something steadfast, buoyed by the weight of his team behind him. Their combined efforts and shared stories resonated within him, fueling a flicker of defiance against the lurking self-doubt. "We've endured long hours and communication breakdowns, but today we reclaim our narrative," he asserted, passion igniting in his chest. He glanced at Marisol, who nodded in encouragement, her confidence now radiating. Leo, standing tall beside her, began to ignite the room with his own insights. "We're not merely proposing changes, we're demanding the respect our roles deserve," he boldly declared, his words cutting through the thick tension. Jack felt a momentary release. This was no longer solely his fight. Together they faced a common adversary. But despite their synergy, Jack sensed layers of doubt within himself. How deeply had they internalized past failures? What if Mr. Johnson's indifference forced them back into the shadows? As the questions swirled in his head, Mr. Johnson interrupted, his voice low and measured. You've provided interesting concepts, but how do you plan to execute this within your current workload? Demonstrating change is one thing, implementing it is another. The challenge hung in the air, a threat that weighed against their hopes. Jack's heart raced. Was he prepared for this level of scrutiny? He swallowed, remembering the stories they had shared, the memories woven into their advocacy. "We understand the challenges, but we have a clear plan," he replied, recalibrating with newfound determination. "We've analyzed workloads and identified key areas where cooperation can maximize efficiency without increasing hours." Suddenly, a flood of ideas erupted from Marisol and Leo, each building upon one another's contributions. The notion of shared responsibility, once shaky, transformed into a unified front. They spoke about creating a mentorship system and instituting collaborative scheduling to bolster both worker satisfaction and operational efficiency. Jack felt a surge of gratitude wash over him, a realization that their journey together had culminated in this defining moment. Little by little, they were rewriting their own narratives. Yet, underneath the surface of elation, doubt still lurked. What if Mr. Johnson was unconvinced? Would their explanations be dissected under the harsh judgment of corporate skepticism? Jack's pulse quickened at the thought. "What you're proposing is ambitious," Mr. Johnson replied, finally uncrossing his arms. "But ambition alone won't transform mindsets. I need to see that you understand the risks." Jack's mind raced. This wasn't just about convincing a superior. It was an invitation to confront their collective trauma. "We do understand the risks," Jack said, his voice steadying. "We're undertaking a journey of our own, learning to dismantle complacency and drive change not just in our processes, but in our entire work culture. It's about building a foundation for trust." The room shifted. Jack could sense the evolving rapport. Perhaps there was a path to reconstruction, both personal and professional. Each nod from his teammates fortified his resolve. As they fielded questions and pushed through resistance with fervor, something inside Jack ignited. A quiet strength began to weave itself into his psyche, a dawning comprehension that rising from the ashes of dysfunction was not only possible, but necessary. Just when success felt within arm's reach, Mr. Johnson's face morphed into a flicker of contemplation. "If you're willing to take on the responsibility, I'm willing to discuss further." But as they neared a resolution, doubt whispered ominously, challenging Jack's newly found confidence. What did further really entail? Did it require sacrifices he wasn't prepared to make? As their presentation drew to a close, the question that plagued him loomed larger. What impact would this journey have on his own identity, and was he ready to take that dive? Jack stood outside the meeting room, heart racing, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The weight of the moment pressed down on him. They had come so far, but the cliff of uncertainty still loomed high. Their presentation was not only a reflection of collective ideas, but also a testament to their evolving identity, a rejection of the complacency they once accepted as fate. Walking back into the kitchen, Jack noticed the energy shift among his team. There was a vibrancy radiating off them, as though they had stepped into a new reality after confronting their fears. "We did it," Marisol said, her voice infused with a mix of disbelief and joy. "Not quite yet," Jack replied, knowing the battle was not over. "Now we await their decision." The air hummed with anticipation and camaraderie. They had taken the first brave step toward reclaiming their narrative. He reflected on how far each of them had come, from silent endurance to vocal advocates for change. As the days passed, a sense of purpose settled deeply within Jack. They had owned, presented their proposal, and Mr. Johnson had promised to review it, yet Jack didn't want to let their momentum dissipate. He took the initiative to organize daily briefings, fostering a space for his colleagues to air their concerns and suggestions while they awaited a response. This was their project, and he wanted everyone to feel the weight of ownership. Tony approached him one afternoon, a rare smile breaking through the tense routine. "You've really gotten everyone fired up, Jack. Makes a difference, doesn't it?" Yeah, Jack replied, appreciation swelling within him. It's about holding each other accountable while pushing towards our goals. We're not just workers, we're shaping this kitchen together. That evening, as Jack flipped through a dizzying amount of feedback notes from his team, he recognized their signs of growth, a shift in dialogue filled with aspirations rather than complaints. The transformation he had ignited in himself was expanding outward, evident in every shared conversation. They had begun envisioning a new culture, one that encompassed respect, collaboration, and dignity. Then came the awaited day. Mr. Johnson assembled everyone for an announcement. Jack felt the collective anticipation of his colleagues thrumming in the air like a live wire. This was it. After considering your proposal, we will be implementing several of your strategies starting next week, Mr. Johnson declared, his tone encouraging but cautious. However, it is imperative that this transition is managed wisely. A plan must be in place to ensure these changes are effective without added strain on our existing operations. Cheers erupted in the kitchen, and Jack fought to rein in his excitement. Their efforts had finally borne fruit, a victory not just for him, but for every hardworking soul behind the counters. It meant their voices mattered, that they weren't merely nameless part-timers lost in the system. Jack felt a mixture of relief and pride swell within him. As a small scale of recognition from management infiltrated their ranks, it became increasingly clear that Jack's personal evolution had influenced the culture of the workplace. He was no longer simply a dishwasher labeled as just. He had become an advocate, a leader capable of invoking change. The weeks that followed brought challenges. The implementation of new systems revealed pitfalls, and Jack often stood at the forefront, rallying the team through uncharted waters. Yet each obstacle tested his resolve and deepened his confidence as a leader. He articulated frustrations and celebrated successes with equal importance, demonstrating that leadership hinged on connection and empathy. One late evening, while discussing the latest workflow adjustments, Leo looked Jack in the eye and said, "You know, I never thought changing our workplace was possible, but you opened the door." "I didn't do it alone," Jack countered, but internally, a profound satisfaction surged within him. This growth wasn't merely personal, it was communal, a testament to what they had collectively achieved. They had proven that a shared commitment could amplify voice and transform a stagnant culture. As Jack stepped into the kitchen one morning, donning his apron as usual, but feeling markedly different, he no longer felt the dread of being just a dishwasher. He saw himself reflected in the eyes of his colleagues, each face a silent affirmation that he had earned his place as a leader. Later, when he received formal recognition during management's quarterly review meeting, the applause echoed deeper than the walls of the conference room. It resonated within him profoundly. This was a moment of achievement fueled not by selfish ambition, but by the harmony of teamwork. Their small yet mighty crew had conquered the perception of inadequacy, proving their worthiness. Jack now held the solid confidence of an established position, clever and respected. He walked through the kitchen knowing the heart of this transformation lived within every conversation he had initiated, every struggle they had tackled together. He knew, as he wiped his hands on the apron, that he had not only conquered the turmoil of his past, but had also rewritten the future of their shared culinary journey. As the sun streamed through the windows of the bustling kitchen, Jack breathed in the warmth of success. It was more than an accomplishment. It was the emergence of who he was meant to be. You need to subscribe now to stay connected with the journey of overcoming and transformation. This is the moment to show your support for pathways that can spark change in lives. Leave a like now to help us reach others who share our dreams and struggles. Comment below with your own reactions and theories. Every voice matters in this community. And don't wait even one more second to share this with at least 5 friends who need to hear this story of triumph.